Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Monday, it's September the 2nd, 2024, and today's topic will be painting snowy mountains. I believe that's what we'll call it. And I'm using a pencil. We'll start with a pencil sketch, and I'm using a mechanical pencil so I don't have to sharpen. And let's start off by creating a landscape. I'm just going to use about half the page. Not too big because it'll take too long, and then two, I'm going to be using markers that are like paint brushes, and they're not that big. But before we begin, we'll start off doing a pencil sketch. And you can, once I get to the part where I am going to use color, you can continue doing a pencil sketch, or I will put a link to the previous video about using pen and ink to do snowy mountains. Or you can also follow along with the painting and colored portion of this video. But it's a lot of different things that are going to happen, so I'm going to start a 5-minute timer, and it'll take a while. I'm going to work quickly but not hurry. So I'm starting a 5-minute timer. So once you get the picture set up here, it'll be similar to the pen and ink drawing, and it seems like people like that video, and I mean I do too. But we'll change the composition up. So in the other video we had and we're gonna do that here too, we're gonna have a foreground, middle ground, and a background. But in that one, the focal point was the background mountain at the peak, but then this one, we'll have it be in the middle here. And you can either follow along pretty closely or just take the idea. The concepts are the same. So to begin with, I would lightly figure out where the horizon is. And when you're doing a composition, you don't necessarily want it to be exactly symmetrical unless you're going for something like that. But it can look kind of unnatural, basically. So just lightly sketch a horizon, and again, if this were the middle, I would go a little bit above the middle and keep it pretty light, just so you know where it is. And then now that you have the horizon, I would place the foreground and give it a slight kind of angle, since we're doing mountains, and this is going to be pretty mountainous. So I'm gonna go this way. Previously I had it going the other way. So with this one, I would make it go across the picture here, but yeah, like give it kind of an angle. Okay, and then so we said that the middle ground here will be kind of the focal point. So I'm gonna start to sketch in some mountain. Again, with the way to hold, there's videos about how to hold the pen, or in this case, a pencil. So start to loosely sketch in some mountains, and this is the middle ground, and keep the peak somewhere here because that'll be the focal point. So yeah, I want to kind of do this as I'm talking, or I'm gonna do this as I'm talking. Yeah, there's several things I want to go over, especially once we start to paint. So one thing is that the reason it's painting is because we're not drawing. So this is drawing or sketching. We're not using line work. We're going to be using paint strokes. So that's, to me, that's really the main difference. So I'm gonna kind of do this kind of thing with the middle ground here, these mountains, something like that. And then you can see that I went over the horizon, and because I did that, it makes, like, you're not going to see the top portion of this mountain. You're going to be looking more straight onto it. I'm going to indicate some form here, so that's going to be where it's darker, where the shadows will be. So just get something going there. And also, so that's 5 minutes, by the way. Also, like, anything that is beneath or under this horizon line, you're going to be kind of looking at the top a little bit. So next, so that's the middle, that's the foreground, and then here's the background. What I'm going to do here is sketch in some simple mountains, and I'm going to do several, and with these, make them overlap like this and smaller the further they go. Until they reach the horizon. And so they're going to be behind each other, and so you have that overlap. And they're not going to be as detailed. Alright, and then the next thing would be to kind of indicate some clouds. So keep in mind the white of the paper. Since this is snowy mountains, the white of the paper will be the brightest part, and it's going to lead the eye along with the shadows. With that said, I'm going to kind of sketch in, this would be sky right here. I'm going to kind of sketch in something like that. And then kind of leave it at that, and I'm going to let the paint do a lot of that, the background there. And then for we'll put in some pine trees. So I'm gonna focus on the foreground first, because the pine trees here, or whatever's in the front here, we want to not paint on top of. So place some foreground trees. So we'll do, again, keep it at a triangle kind of shape. And also you might want to indicate kind of the slope here, so that the trees grow from the ground. And since it's snow, the trunks are being covered up. And also vary the distance, how they're growing. Do a little bit of overlap could be good. So whatever looks correct, or the way trees might grow. So yeah, something like this. And then for the really close foreground here, start to indicate some leaves that might grow, or grass. And these grass are going to be pretty stiff because of the snowy conditions. So just a little bit of that. And then in this middle area here, you're looking, there'll be some pine trees. So I would kind of indicate the form of the mountains, and then put smaller triangles and just kind of sketch them in. Just use jaggedy shapes. Again, you can just keep sketching and detailing with pencil or pen, but I'm gonna paint it. So yeah, that's pretty good right there. So yeah, once you get this far, so that took about 10 or 15 minutes, so that's 5 minutes right there. I'm gonna start another 5-minute timer. And the painting process will take a little bit longer because, one, I'm still learning to use those markers that I've been talking about. And also the colors are limited, which I'm okay with, because sometimes that actually helps, because it helps you to focus and like learn. And also the color palette, a limited color palette can look better. But next we'll talk about using the colors. All right, so yeah, I'm just gonna use these paint marker things, Sharpie creative markers for this. This is gonna be a demo. It's also kind of a step-by-step tutorial, and also a color study. I wouldn't call it like a finished painting, but we're gonna be using painting. We're gonna paint it. And with that said, I want to talk about, I figure that you're probably not going to have these exact markers unless you want to get them. But the colors are pretty limited, but that can be good. It can make you be more creative in your usage of it, and also unify the colors more because you're not using so many. So with that said, the predominant color I'm going to use will be like this blue, this gray color, and white. And I haven't actually painted a picture like this before with these markers, so I'm gonna work quickly, but I'm not going to hurry through it because you want to make sure it looks correct. And then I also have kind of like for this foreground area, I'm going to have a little bit different colors where I've got this yellow, orange, red, green, and purple. And these colors don't mix, so you can't like blend on here on this paper. So you have to be kind of creative about it. And then just speaking of the paper, I have like this paper is kind of, it bleeds a little bit and it kind of buckles after several layers, and it kind of sees, you can kind of see through it like this. This is from yesterday's video, so you might want to put a sheet of paper so it doesn't bleed through to the next page. And also for all of these videos, I basically just, because I use ink, I just draw on one side because I don't want to worry about it bleeding through. I don't like seeing like ghost lines through the paper. All right. So with all of that said, we have a pencil sketch and we're gonna paint it up. So to start off with, I'm gonna go with something light. So I've got this gray and white color, and the white of this, you might want to do some tests. So one, it picks up pigment, that's the other thing, so kind of have to keep that in mind. But you can clean it. And the white of this is pretty similar to the paper. But then when you put this on top of like a color, it's not going to be as bright. It's not going to be that opaque. So it'll be more of a grayish. So that's one thing. And then this gray. So I'm not in love with the idea of using gray in this, but like you have to. And it'll be okay. And then also, so that's 5 minutes. I'll start another one. I believe we're on 15 to 20 minutes right now. But then you can layer it to a certain degree. And that looks pretty bright. And it depends on what color's underneath it. So that's something to think about. Now, the reason I said I'm not in love with using the gray is because it just looks kind of boring, but it can work. And you have to be creative with like the tools you have. The other one is blue. So I actually mostly want it to be kind of bluish, but you can see that the blue is very dark, probably like a lot darker. Now with that said, I don't want to use black as shadows because I think that wouldn't look very good for this painting. So this will probably be like some of like the darkest area. But then you can kind of make a little bit of a lighter kind of blue with this, with the gray. We'll see. And then so yeah, just to begin with, let's just do that. And then I wanted to do this foreground. So the thing with painting is that depending on what you're wanting to do with it, you could just start painting it and be kind of experimental, and that's fine. I mean, it depends on the approach. With this particular painting, I wanted to have like a kind of a blueprint or a sketch, because of the nature of the picture and the nature of the markers and stuff. So for example, I want to leave some areas white, like the paper, and so I needed to have some indication of that, of what to leave unpainted. So with that said, I'm going to start with this gray, and I'm going to go start at the background, which is usually pretty good, a good way to start. But then, like I said, I don't want to paint over like some of this paper, the white of the paper. And with that said, like most of the white of the paper will be here, maybe a little bit here, but you'll see that it does lead the eye quite a bit. So I'm going to start off by just painting, kind of indicating the shadow area, and I'm just going to use this gray sparingly, just kind of start to put the shadow in. Now this is a mixture of painting and drawing right now, but it's mostly painting because you're using the brush strokes. Because if you were using a pencil or a pen, you'd have to draw this shape, and I think like that's the main difference, well, amongst other things, plus the color, of course. So I'm going to just kind of indicate some of this, and then keep in mind the kind of squint at it, to see the values, and then I'm going to say that this is kind of the middle tone. But color it affects things, the approach. So for what I mean is, even the color that you use, like if the background here were a different color, it also affects just as much as value. I'm going to indicate, just for my own sake, kind of paint in the underside of the pine trees in the foreground here, just so I know where they're at. And I'm going to use that triangle as so that's 5 minutes, as a guide, and I'm going to use the white of the paper as snow that's like on top. And just kind of get like the look of it going here. Excuse the lawnmower sounds out there. So yeah, like I would leave a lot of the white of the paper, because you can't get that back once you paint over it, and it does a lot to lead the eye. Okay. For these like pine trees in the middle ground, so think about, like, you might want to indicate, so we're having the light just to be simple, just have it coming from like the left side here. So I'm gonna indicate a little bit. Again, see, I'm using paint strokes. Which is kind of like drawing, but I'm gonna let the paint strokes kind of tell the story. So think a little bit about, like, the trees are casting some shadows, but it depends on how they're growing out of the ground. Yeah, that lawnmower is pretty annoying. I might start to indicate a little bit of this, kind of like the shadow of the land here, the slope. So that's just to get us started. Well, I'm gonna keep going. I don't want to mess up my flow here, but yeah, that sound is annoying, so my apologies for that. So let's add in some of this blue, because I want this middle area and the back area to kind of have like a lot of atmosphere, but this blue is pretty dark, like I was saying. So yeah, it's good to test it out before you put it onto the picture. So just to begin with, I'm going to start in this background and think about the shadow area, because again, there might be some areas you want to just leave white. Also think about like the focal point. You don't want to compete with this. So part of why I'm doing these snowy landscapes is because it's kind of concept art for my story that I'm working on. So now that you put these mountains in, I would go in and like make this be the same shadow color. So we're gonna say that this blue is the dark area, and still keep it, think about the light and the shadow, but start to combine some of this blue a little bit, and then also keep in mind like these foreground areas, and don't cover completely the previous color, just let some of that come through. And you can adapt some of these ideas to ink if you're using a pen, or you could just use like a black brush. It would still work. Alright, so now that I've gotten this far, I'm not even going to use this blue for this foreground, because as you'll see, the color makes a big difference as far as like depth. So like, for example, with this blue and some of this gray, we've differentiated like the middle and then some of this like background. So with that said, I want the background here, like where the clouds are in this background, I want that to be further back than this foreground. So what I'm gonna do is start to paint in more of like the clouds, so that there's not so much white. So I'm gonna do it. That's pretty loud. So I'm gonna do it in, so this is where like painting comes into effect here, where I'll just paint over like the pencil lines, because they were meant to be guides anyway, and use the paint strokes to start to actually do the drawing, which is the clouds. So for example, the light is hitting, so I'm painting like the underside of the clouds. Now, because you had established the horizon line, you're going to see some underside of the cloud that's above the horizon line, depending on obviously like the form of the cloud. But part of this is so you can see that it's starting to form the light side of this mountain, and then part of it is to push it back further than this foreground area, and that's being established by the the white of the paper is actually what's causing, so that's like the brightest area. And also even the paint strokes will affect it. So for example, if I start to kind of go in a different direction a little bit, it's going to affect the eye flow. So, and then once we do that, you can start to see that like I can use this gray to kind of create, now this sort of becomes the middle, and then the blue becomes like the darker color. So I'm going to use that to sync these to the back. So you see what I mean? Like this is the snow, but we won't make it as white as this one. And then again with the paint strokes, you can start to have a little bit more detail, more structure, but because of the color of you're using, it will still be further back. So I'm gonna pause this because they're cutting grass outside and it's distracting. So I'll be back in a little bit. All right, I'm back. I don't know if they're gonna come back or not, but it's kind of annoying. Hopefully not. So yeah. So even with so it's basically three colors. You've got this blue and a gray and then like the white of the paper. And it's already looking pretty okay. Now for these middle ground trees, I'm just gonna indicate, put small paint strokes to indicate the trees like this. And just kind of vary, like there's going to be clusters of trees like this, like a little bit going up the mountain here. And then again with just the paint stroke, you can kind of indicate like the size of the tree there. So that's already pretty okay. But yeah, I wouldn't use this blue anywhere here. And so you can kind of see how color dictates, and also of course it's darker, so value and color. But so yeah, it's not just the value but also the color. Like if I use this blue here, it would combine it with the middle ground. But you can see that now if this is the only colors I'm going to use, I might put a little bit of blue, and I actually will in a little bit, but just something to think about. Notice like with the white here, I haven't even used that at all. So next I'm going to start to work on this foreground a little bit. And for that, for the dark areas, I'm going to use a different color. So I'll use purple for right now. So using the strokes that we used earlier as a guide, I'm going to start to put in like the dark areas, keeping in mind that there's snow covering these leaves here. So wherever I said that, like, there are leaves here on these pine trees, I'm gonna just put a little bit of this darker purple color. And notice that because it is a different color than like this blue, you've separated the foreground from the background just by usage of color, because the values are basically the same. I hear them returning, so if I have to pause, I will. Now today's Labor Day, so you would think they weren't working. Also for these grass things, I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of indicate a little bit of this grass. So yeah, I'm using a different color to create depth. Although value-wise, it's basically the same. But then also the difference is that I'm showing more of the white of the paper here, which is to say, like, it could be white paint. And then the next thing would be just to stick with like the idea of color. If I were to put, let's go with like orange, a little bit of orange. So we're gonna say like, so we're saying the sun is coming down this way. Just put some orange strokes for the grass, and also just by itself, like here. Again, use the size of the stroke, so the further away it is, the smaller, and then the closer it is, you can use like a bigger stroke, kind of like that. And again, you're leading the eye, so when you put down this orange, it's darker than the white of the paper, so you want to use it sparingly because you're wanting to say that there's a lot of snow. But because the color is orange, like if this were a black and white picture, the value would be like it's gray, but in color, the orange just grabs your eye. However, because of the level of detail, these mountains become more interesting. So again, just some thoughts about that. Now, I could take this into a lot more detail, but just for the sake of this video and the fact that they're mowing the lawn outside, I'm gonna not make this too long, although it's already kind of a long video. Hey, you gotta do what you can. So up here, you might want to think about like the shadow. It's kind of be around this side here. What else? I like doing winter landscapes, not just because it goes with the story I'm working on, but also it teaches you about kind of being minimal. I'm gonna add some green just to use all the colors. So I'm gonna go over this purple again, like this dark area. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna use the green like right here. A lot of noise going on right now. So yeah, leave the white of the paper for the snow, and then don't put the green like everywhere, because if you because that's the thing with color. I mean, if I put it over here, it's going to like combine them just visually speaking, even if the value is different or is the same. So right now we'll just leave it at that. We've used so now we got some yellow. So here I might put it again, just to take it into another level of like focusing the eye. I'm going to put in some yellow kind of right here, and just leave it at that. And then to take it even further, you could add a little bit of red, and again, just maybe a couple of strokes of red there. Now with that said, you might want to, if you want to start to unify the picture a little bit, so for like maybe these further out trees a little bit, a few strokes of the blue will start to combine the composition, the painting, but not too much. For like the fourth, like I wouldn't even use it up here. So hopefully that shows you how the difference between color and value, because I feel like if I were to put this blue right here, it would just make it like, I want them separate. But I feel like once you get this far, you can kind of, if you want to look up some reference to, but still use like the same colors and the same techniques for your picture. I'm going to conclude the video, but before I do, I'm going to draw in the border because it's getting a little too noisy. And also I like where it's at, so that's part of it. Like if it, like don't rush. I mean, if the picture is looking good and you have to like stop because you're being interrupted or something, just leave it. And you can leave it as a study. So yeah, with that said, thank you for supporting the channel. Thanks for joining me today, and until next time, keep on sketching.